We were all set to go just about at this time right now, and it would have been a massive attack. We were all set to go, but when the allies ask to call it off, you got to sort of say, well, let's see. And the reason they asked is I think there's a deal. There's a deal on Hormuz, and then there will be a deal on the nuclear, or you might call it the denuclearization of Iran. I call it the denuclearization of Iran.
The president says that the Gulf allies asked him to hold fire and that new talks with Iran are set to begin today. Taking a look at oil markets, WTI is below $80 on this news. Markets across the board are trading higher today. But for me, Josh, this feels like Lucy with the football or Groundhog Day or however you want to look at it, because we keep getting faked out by this conversation. A deal's pending. No, they're not responding to that. We're going to have to attack them. Oh, the allies told us to pull back. Your thoughts on why the market is responding this way? Because I would expect this time around, this has gone on enough that the market wouldn't really have faith in this.
I was looking at just the correlation of the S&P 500 and some of the indexes to crude oil and to WTI. It has faded a lot over the last several months. I don't know how much I attribute today's. Yes, they're coinciding with each other for sure. You have oil down big and you have the S&P looking at maybe a record close today. But on a day-to-day basis, we have sort of lost the what's oil doing and then stocks will be doing the inverse sort of dynamic. And I think investors are right to start shifting that way because, to your point, Jackie, it is Groundhog Day. I think we have this conversation almost every Monday. And so what I would be most concerned about at this point in relation to oil, this conflict heating back up, the Treasury market still needs some help right now, or it at least can't take more pressure. You're looking at a 10-year on Friday that was at 4.75, its highest level in 18 months. That 30-year keeps moving higher, its highest level since 2007. I think those market pressures are starting to make the president maybe say, okay, if I go big here, like I'm saying I go big, you're going to get a big reaction in the fixed income market, and then I think you finally see markets start to notice. If that 10-year goes to 5, I think then maybe stocks finally start to sell off. Okay, and we can see treasuries are a little bit lower today as a result of this, that sort of calming aspect at least, that everything is on pause. If the allies did, in fact, ask the president to hold off, I could understand why the UAE, Saudi, and Qatar, the surrounding region, would say, this is a lot to take in, and we're going to bear the brunt of whatever overflow there is. And so, you know, they're having conversations about that. And I would think the president would consider it. But part of me wonders, Marcus, I don't know, you're a businessman, he's a businessman. Are the allies' theory, is that just cover for him pulling back once again?
We know him to be a fantastic negotiator. We know that that's what the president is. But it seems like Iran's become pretty good negotiators as well, which is like, I'm willing to do a deal. Let me get what I need. Let me pause. Let me come back again. I think the bigger issue, and we talked a little bit about the 10-year and talked a little bit about oil. OPEC this weekend announced that it was going to start production again. That drives prices down. And so I don't really know what the bullwhip effect is of that. The Treasury markets definitely want some level of predictability with how the general economy is working. And I think for business owners going on this roller coaster ride, I would say people at this point have a lot of deal fatigue, a lot of negotiation fatigue, and have kind of moved on.
I want to just make the point that I read a great piece in the New York Post about the protesters. They came out in droves in the beginning of the year. They were executed by their own regime. We have not heard a lot on the ground from people in that country, and that is on purpose as a result of the IRGC and the current government in place. They've always censored their people. They don't want us to know what's happening. But the Post was citing sources on the ground who claim the protesters have organized and used this time, that they even have put some weapons away, even household kind of like regular objects that they could use as weaponry to try something again. And this whole time, Lydia, I've been saying the president does want regime change, but he doesn't want to be the change agent of that. And I wonder if he's got intelligence that something is happening on the ground, and therefore that would explain part of the reason why he'd be waiting.
That would be great. I mean, that would be really great. But I mean, I too have seen that. You know, I think this president does care about life and the quality of life in Iran for the Iranian people. But we've talked about it here when I've been here before. I'm just not as optimistic that we're going to see that, because the protesters there have been slaughtered in the streets and they are not armed. They don't have a Second Amendment like we have here. Where are they going to get the arms? I wasn't really sure how that was going to come about unless we were going to arm them. And that's a whole different type of conversation and kind of can of worms there. On the oil point too, though, I was actually looking at what Exxon and Chevron were saying about oil, as they have just reported too. There's not an issue, to Marcus's point about OPEC, producing. There's not an issue with supply, but there is an issue with refining the oil, and there's limited refinement capacity, not just here but globally, and that is expected to keep gas prices higher for longer, even as we're seeing oil plummeting on the crude under $80 a barrel now in response, which would ordinarily be encouraging. I think just kind of more of this exhaustion and people looking for relief. The fact that we have limited refinement capacity means that relief is not going to come soon enough for a lot of Americans that are going to be voting in the midterms and then beyond. So I think this is going to be difficult to message, and I think the administration needs to think about how they're going to be talking about how we get out of this.
Taylor, you can talk about yields if you want to, because I know that you always want to. But I also am sort of thinking about what Lydia is saying, and refining capacity has been an oil issue forever. And I'm really thinking this just on the fly. I hadn't planned to ask this question, but I'm thinking about the allies, also the UAE, Saudi, Qatar, other producers. Maybe possibly liking this higher oil price. While they are allies and they love President Trump in certain ways, they are making money, and they don't like, especially when their budgets rely on oil revenue, very different from private enterprise that we have here.
I, too, kind of woke up this morning and am starting to ask, they're on our team, but this is a new and fragile allyship. And they keep saying, pause, we have a deal. But we know Iran will never make a deal. So who do we really trust over there? I just kind of started to wonder, they're on our side, but do we always need to be listening to everything they say? Every time they come to us and they say, don't do it, we're going to do a deal, and I've yet to see that. So I have deal fatigue, and I also have some relationship questioning fatigue. I want to know more about why we're always deferring to them, even though I know that they've been a partner in this. It's been a complicated relationship, I think, to say the least. A couple points about yields.
Before you go there,
yeah.
What's the alternative in your mind?
We take them out, and we be done with this
once and for all.
3 months ago. I'm not a national policy expert. I'm more economics, but I think a lot of people with deal fatigue are like, who's in charge? Like, we're in charge. We're setting the pace of this. Why are they dictating to us what we should or shouldn't be doing? It's just questioning. With rates, and I'll be fast and a weave to go. 5-year on a 30-year kind of makes me nervous, sure. But I also always question the why behind rates are rising. If we're rising because of higher issuance, higher supply, sure. If we're rising because of higher inflation, sure. But if we're rising on real growth, I'm more okay with it. We've talked about how volatile Atlanta Fed GDP is. It goes from 5 to 6.2 next quarter. High number, especially off of a low 1.5. But we talked about how last quarter's GDP was low because imports to boost all of the AI stuff we're building here is a negative sign in front of GDP. So I'm less nervous about yields rising because if it's driven by real growth on the horizon, I actually don't mind if yields rise a little bit. A 5% makes me less nervous.
Anybody? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to take over in our next topic and look at it, but the yields are moving around because the global money supply is moving around. And the global money supply is moving around because you have all this oil movement all over the place. And if you look at the other folks in the Middle East, you have to wonder, is money moving around because they're moving money around? I worry about these treasuries. I worry a lot.